Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on our bonus session. Some of you will be watching this recording just before we pull the workshop content down. We have the amazing Afsha Butt with us. She is
Hi.
a leader when it comes. Hi, thanks for joining us. You are a leader in wealth management. And so without further ado, we'll jump in.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Well, tell us about yourself and your journey and who you are and how did you achieve so much success?
Okay, well, I'll start off with, so my name is Afsha. I'm a senior financial consultant. I've been in the industry for about 12 years, and I've had my own practice for about 7 now. And a little personal story of mine that I like to start with is just, I come from sort of a lower income home. Like I grew up with a single mother. There was no child support. There was nothing like that. I mean, to put it into perspective, my sister, my mom, and I shared a bed, and my brother slept in the kitchen. So that's kind of my story and where I come from, right? We grew up not really knowing what else was out there, and that's sort of where the beginning of my journey began.
So that's the beginning, humble beginnings, and then today you are a leading wealth advisor in Edmonton and beyond. So tell us about that.
Oh, I never know where to start with a question like that because I'm like, what do you want to know? I mean, let's talk about where my financial journey began. So it started when I was about 10 years old, and my grandpa took me to open my first bank account, right? So we would get like maybe a birthday gift, or in my culture, we celebrate Eid, so we get money for that, and just like a Christmas gift sort of thing. And he gave me the option. He was like, you know what you can do is you can take this money and you can go spend it. Or what you can do is you can take this money, and if you put it in this bank account, I'll double it. And so what I realized, remember those passbooks that we used to have where you can go put it in the transaction machine? I saw how quick money could build. And from then on, I mean, I started to learn the value of money and understand what it can get you and that it's like a tool. Fast forward to now, I never thought I'd be opening up my own practice and getting to where I am. But I mean, I'm sure as you ask me questions, I can deliver more.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, we have a topic in common that we absolutely love, and that is mindset, right? So it's giving a hint as to what's on our ticker, because the topic today is the one thing successful women do to build wealth for their families. And you and I might agree where that revolves around. And so let's talk about mindsets. What are the mindset shifts you needed to make to build the success you've built? Because you're an influencer, people trust you, you're known in Edmonton, right? So what are the mindset shifts required?
I'd say one of the first mindset shifts that I had to do to even first ever get into this was realize that my story wasn't going to be the reason that it wasn't going to stop me from getting where I was. So a lot of the times I found myself saying this a lot, that the very thing that had me figure out how to get here, the differences that made me, my story, my beginning, the success I've experienced is because of that, not in spite of. That was a mindset shift that I had to be able to understand, like, how do I rip this? I had this ceiling, right? I used to think that this is only how far I can go. This is where I come from. And what I had to do is understand that, yeah, my starting line is a lot further behind other people, but I'm going to take my situation and step outside of that and say, okay, how am I going to overcome this? And once I figure out those very, steps I had to take to overcome my starting line and get further, that's going to be what gets me further.
Yeah. In the last week, we've been talking during our workshop on the changes that happen when you become a mom. Like everything, your world turns upside down. And so we talked about mindset. That was the first topic, helping women understand how their priorities change. They're not only living for themselves and their husband anymore and their common joy, but they're also taking care of a human being. And so there are so many things that they have to think about, right? Like wealth planning and wills and directives. So what is the one thing that you think can propel women into wealth, right? And we can set limitations on our mind, but what is the one thing, and that's an expansion on mindset. What do you think they can do to start building that wealth? And there's a difference between money and wealth. It's a different concept.
Absolutely. It is completely different. It's like what you have and what you can create, right? There's very differences in that. So, but I would say the first and foremost, is you have to shift your mindset. And then the first thing you got to do is you have to take action. So rather than mulling over what the risks are going to be, what is going to happen, how this isn't going to work out. I got asked this just recently in an interview, and it's like, what is the one thing successful people do that other successful people don't have? I'm like, action. But the only way you're going to take action is by shifting your mindset to begin with. And more recently, like these are all just things that are happening as I go. So it's so easy to answer, some of this and share it with everybody that's watching. Like my friend said, if I was in your position, Afsha, right now, the first and foremost thing I would do is invest in your mind. And so that's what I've been doing, right? I never thought I would ever get a business coach. I never thought I would need one at this point because I've had experienced success in expanding my team. But I realized all of the things that are important to me, taking care of my single mother, making sure that my employees feel like they're growing and that they feel valued and they have careers, making sure my clients see the abundance that is out there. Those things are all going to come under the umbrella of shifting my mindset and being able to grow from there. So that is the number one thing I would say invest in is your mindset and then take action.
Yeah, absolutely. And does mindset work ever stop?
No, it doesn't. You only can grow. It's not exhausting. It's exhilarating. Like you think you have this goal and you get there and then you get there and you're like, okay, but what else is out there? Right. And so at first it was all about making it. I always was so focused on money because I didn't have any growing up. Right. I was always like, you need money to have these things. You need this to get there. But it's like, no. When I shift my mindset and now I'm in a privileged position to be able to say that, right, I'm able to see, okay, it's not just money that gets you somewhere, right? You can have all these things, but if you don't have the mindset around how to get there and how to keep going and growing, it doesn't matter what you have.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Mindset is a huge shift. So what do you think, what are the biggest mindset blocks women and mothers have when it comes to money and wealth? And what are their options to make those shifts? We often think like, I can't do it. Or on maternity leave, we get EI, if we're lucky, right? You get maybe $2,000 and maybe a top up. So the first thing that can happen is a scarcity mindset is I don't have money.
Absolutely.
So
yeah. And this is where I want to be able to say, like, everybody that's probably watching this or viewing this, I mean, we're in North America, right? Like maybe some people across the globe, I'm not sure, but at the end of the day, like we're kind of that top 5% or top 1% of the world, right? Right now we're receiving CERB or we're getting EI. If there's something happening in your life, 70% of the world didn't get that. Right. And so we might see like, oh, it's just $2,000. It's barely going to cover my expenses. But again, if you're looking for negative, you're going to find that. If you look for abundance and you look for all the opportunities and positives around you, and obviously within even Canada and America, there is struggle. And I don't want to say that doesn't exist. But if you look for that, that's what you'll find. Right. When you look around in your situation and you say, hey, right now, all of us are so lucky that so many of our families support a lot of what we're doing. Some people don't have that. They don't have a support system. So it's not about money. When you say wealth, there are so many things that define the assets that you have, and that's what defines wealth, not the money and the dollar sign of what you have. That comes, but wealth is identified through the assets that you have, and not all of those are tangible or physical things.
Yes. So would you say that mindset builds wealth?
Mindset is the only thing. You can't do it without it. You could try to tell someone what they should do with their life, and if they don't see it and they don't want it, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, absolutely. What is the difference between a cost or debt and an investment? And let's talk about the cost of not investing after that. So the difference between cost, debt, investment.
Okay, well, let's talk about like investments and like debt and how that's related to cost or expense, right? So an investment is something usually we say we're going to put something into it and it's going to grow. Debt is never associated with that, but it's actually oftentimes how we end up being able to invest, right? So one thing that I really like using as an example is that we're all conditioned to basically believe that you can take on $500,000 of debt to buy a home. It's the next thing that you do, right? Like you're having children or you have a partner and you want to take this next stage in your life. A lot of us aren't thinking that I'm going to go $500,000 to debt to buy this house. You're just thinking, I want to buy this house, right? And so why aren't we able to do that, when it comes to a liability or a loan or investing in ourselves in order to build this asset? So I always say, think of investment as something that's going to be, it might very well take debt or a loan to get there, right? And of course you want to plan around it. You do want to think about the risk around it, but you have to shift your mindset and perspective around debt. There's good debt and there's bad debt. Good debt is always when there's a debt tied to an asset class. And again, it's not always tangible, right? A mortgage is tied to a home, but what about student loans? people are like, well, I didn't get anything out of that. Well, yes, you did. You got your ability to learn, you learned resilience. You might now have a profession that's going to earn you this income. So your debt in that is tied to an asset.
Yes.
And the same with, yeah. And I would say this, like my wealthiest clients, my clients, like, let's say you're worth $20 million. It's not just a bunch of assets. There's a lot of liabilities and debt in there because they needed to take on those debts in order to build those assets. So they're worth a total of, let's say 20 million, but it's assets less their liabilities.
What is the cost of not investing? If you look in so I've seen some of your presentations, and let's say if people procrastinate, decide not to take some risk or not educate themselves or just kind of put it in the back burner. I've seen charts for you, a woman who invests in her 20s versus one who starts in her 30s. So tell us about the cost of procrastination if not investing.
Oh, so for that example, that's perfect that you're, using that, because I use that in a lot of my sessions for mindset. And to say that when you start at 20 or 30, like the cost of waiting, let's say 10 years, means that you have to put away so much more. And on top of that, you have to invest for a lot longer, right? When you start, let's say in your 20s, you can actually put a very small amount and then you can stop at like 35. That's that example. And like, that's studies, that's statistics. That's not an opinion, based on different advisors and who you're working with. It's understanding like the cost of time. I always get asked, like, what's your investment philosophy? And mine is to stick to your strategy and then understand the importance of time, right? The more you stick to your game, the more you stick to investing and have time in the market, the more you're going to be able to build.
Yeah.
A lot of people are always waiting for the right moment to start, right? Like, when's the right moment for me to start investing? Well, first I have to go to university, or first I have a kid now, I'll wait. I'm going to wait for, first I'm going to get a house, then I'm going to invest. Like, there's always these ifs or goals that we're trying to get to, and it stops us from putting even something like $100 away a month and investing in ourselves, right? I'm not going to quantify what investing in yourself or in the markets or whatever building those assets means, but time can really cost you a lot. And that's why I say taking action matters.
Yes. Yeah. I talk about that with women when they consider educating themselves. During Mali, for example, as working moms, and they ask me about the cost of the program, and I say, well, what is the cost of not doing this mindset work? What is the cost of not investing in your relationships and in your future and your career skills, and identifying how your mindset is changing, and your wealth planning and your health? What could be the potential cost of that, right? It's sometimes you're talking about those intangible assets. And so if you don't take the time, what is going to be the cost down the road of your kids also not benefiting from that investment in yourself, right?
Yeah. That's in the finance world. That's actually something that I always start off with when I am meeting with mothers and I'm building their plans. It's always, what can I set up for my kids? And I'm like, you have to set up for yourself before you set up for your kids, so that later on in life, your kids aren't looking out for you. Because oftentimes people are finding themselves in that sandwich generation of paying for their parents. They're getting older, they're sick. We have to all of a sudden take care of them, but we also have to take care of our kids. So how can we make sure that we aren't putting our kids or our future generations into that pile of having to take care of two generations? Well, it's going to be by investing in yourself and making sure you're good, so your kid doesn't have to do that when they're older.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So you and we had some initial conversations. We found that we have a lot in common in terms of educating people on mindset. Why did you decide to collaborate with us at Pros and Babes? What inspired you to think that there's some alignment, to repeat the word?
Well, if anyone's listening to this, I heard Kenya speak for like 15 minutes and I was like, oh, wow. You're just, it's so impressive, the passion you have behind what you believe in. I asked my team this too, because we're very careful with who we decide to collab with and who we decide to build a partnership with. And it was almost like everything clicked. We didn't have to try. And the reason for that, I asked my team this, and they said our morals and our values align. Our mindset behind what we're trying to do is always to help others. And we know that the only way to help others is to help them deal with their mindset and grow past their own struggles. And you said all of this and I didn't say anything, right? A lot of the times people can be like, oh, that matters to us too. Is our company vision and our mission is these things. And, it's easy to agree with someone, but you said all of this stuff before I even said a word. And I said, you wouldn't even believe I had a staff meeting the week before that. And I said, everything that you were saying is important to you. And I'm like, okay, this can work. our vision is very similar. We're in completely different fields, but we're in the exact same boat where we want to help people grow and believe in themselves and achieve more than they thought that they could, because it's so possible.
Yes. Yeah. And so we're so excited you're coming to collaborate with us as an in-house expert. Yes. So tell us a little bit. I know we're still ironing out the details and putting it on the spot, but I think, what can when the moms who are in the Mom BU, what can they expect in terms of learning from you? And we talked about really educating moms, right? So we face specific challenges as women when it comes to wealth building. Give us a sneak peek.
Okay, so I mean, what we offer our clients and what we do in actuality outside of, we change people's mindset, but we build financial plans. We take people's goals and we look at their concerns, and then we look at financial data before we are ever recommending product, right? So I say I'm a senior financial consultant. I'm in the investment industry. This is what my practice does. We build financial plans, and I do a lot of business consultancy. So building a business, how to grow, a lot of that involves shifting your mindset, but we really look at the details of customizing that plan to someone that's in front of me. And that's why we start off, we call our first meeting like a yellow notepad and a pen, right? It's like, okay, what's important to you? I'm going to write this down. It's just a conversation piece. And that's really what the value we want to provide anybody that is in your program. What I want to be able to provide them is actually building a plan, right? So when we're considering risk, we are doing that. There's an entire risk protection part of your plan that we consider, because you can take action, but you want to build a plan around that action. Every time I say do action, shift your mindset, take action, it doesn't mean just, put all your money in one thing and never look back. It's building a plan around that, evaluating risks and not letting those things set you back. So we are looking so forward to adding that to your program and being a part of it, because you're doing so much of what's already important to us. Like, I feel like I won't even have to say mindset. When I sit down with someone, they're already working on that. And so what we really want to be able to provide is that one-on-one consultation to anybody that's looking for whatever their specific goal is. A lot of the times, like, I come from working in a retail bank, right? I worked for one of the big 5. And a lot of it was very cookie cutter. Like, you walk in, here's a product, and you walk out. And the next time you walk in, that person's gone, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, but you know what you're getting as a service around that. And so we really, we take care of our clients, and we're looking to build people who look at the long-term perspective and growing with us. So we're really excited to be working with you as well.
Yes, we are too. And we're going to be talking about money soon. In fact, when women enter our space at Pros and Babe, the first 2 things I tell them to look at are money and negotiation, and think about your mindset about money. And so that's why we also had an email campaign with you, and it says you're wealthier than you think. And I love how you look at a whole holistic person. I'll share my personal story here with you. So I've been interested in money for a long time, but I never found the right partner. And when you and I started talking about money, I was like, where have you been all my life, right? Because we looked at everything, not just my bank account, but insurance and the whole concept of estate planning and legacy is so hugely important to me. What my kids and my great grandkids are going to say about me. Well, to do that, you do have to think about the wealth building part of your plan. And so I'm so excited that you're going to bring that lens. So people are joining us today, and we want them to walk away with one action you would like women to take as a result of hearing your story today, wherever they are in their journey, whether they're making a little bit of money or a lot of money, whether they think they're not wealthy because they're on mat leave, they think they're poor, and what is the one action you would like them to take today to further their journey on mindset and money?
So, how you said when it comes to financial planning, we do risk mitigation and income protection. I would say anybody listening to this, I'm going to say quite opposite to that. So one thing I learned in one of my leadership courses, and what I would want to leave you guys with today, is to be unreasonable. Because oftentimes we're so in our own story of what we can't get out of that you got to kind of push away all the what ifs and try. And in order to try and first take action in whatever it is you're going to do, whether you book a consultation with that counselor, whether you do it with a financial planner, you invest in a program, whatever it is you do, to be unreasonable and take that action. And no one's saying don't think about the risk. Nobody's saying throw them out the window. It's that don't stop that from taking your first step.
Yeah. Take that next step. All right. Take a step today. Any last words to our viewers, or are we wrapping up?
I mean, we could talk forever, Kenya, you and I. There's so much. If there's anything else you want to, how has the whole week been? How have the past 4 days been? I've been able to join some, but you've been, first of all, killing it. So if this was the audience, I'd be telling everyone to give you a round of applause. I'm so impressed by your go-getter attitude. So how's it been for you?
I feel so honored that, first of all, women come into our space and give us their time, because if we talk about money, money is energy, time is energy. So if women are coming into our circle and giving energy to grow, and my mission is to help moms bring their talents into the world as professionals and as moms, I feel extremely grateful, right? If you give me your time, you're giving me your energy. It's almost like you're giving me your money to some extent, because you're giving me your attention. And so when I see the women showing up and assessing how they're feeling and how they want to feel and what they're going to do about it, it's the most beautiful thing in the world, right? That's why we're here. And then obviously I'm super thrilled. There's lots of new participants joining us in the Mom BA, and this time there's been a bit of a STEM wave. So, you know, engineering and biology, we also have teachers and marketing. So our group is really filling up with women who are facing challenges, like especially in engineering STEM. The attrition rates, 43%, are for women who like leave the profession or go part-time or leave it all together, 43%, right? So when we told women they could do it all, but they kind of didn't read the fine print and say, except for, you know, career and children. So to see that they see value in what we do and they decide to take a leap of faith has been amazing. Every time somebody decides to join us, we're popping the virtual champagne. So you're in for a treat with the members that we're working with, right? Like women already committed to their growth.
That's amazing, because like, even in the fact that they're starting this or joining it or doing that, you know, we're taught since like we're kids and we go to school, it's like study this and then get these grades, right? As if there's engineers joining it, this is so outside of their comfort level, and it's so outside of what we're socially conditioned to believe, that you do this and you get this. This is outside of the box. And so, you know, a lot of times we blame people for not understanding how to do that, but we don't realize that we're kind of born into a system or society that teaches you follow these rules, and then you get here, and then all of a sudden you graduate or you're working and you think about life and you realize, oh, I'm my own adult. I have to take risks. Not everything can be planned. There is spontaneous things that can be good for me. It's not just following this structured environment. So it is for all the people who have joined and all the people that you're saying are opening up and doing all this, like congrats to all of you guys, because it's such a major step outside of what we're used to doing growing up.
Absolutely. And I'm so proud of our founding members, because they're letting moms know that it's okay to do this. And Pros and Babes is an investment. Like, you have to sit down with your husband and say, are we okay spending a couple of $100s a month for me to do this? It's an investment. And so the ones who took the leap and stood by my side and said, yes, let's do this, let's crush the motherhood penalty together, they are written in my heart forever. And they're inspiring others to do this change. So I hope that in 25 years, we're going to look back on this. Our daughters and sons are going to look back on this as like one of the instrumental movements that crushed the motherhood penalty. That you can go and study engineering, and you know what, you're going to be a mother and an engineer, and it's not going to feel like a tension for so many women. Wouldn't that be amazing, right? That's
one of the things I noticed about when you were talking, right? It's like you actually spoke about the things. I felt like there was so much authenticity around what's missing in our world about what motherhood actually is like, right? Like the people who haven't had children have no concept of what it's like, and people don't talk about it, right? Like women, you know, we bleed once a month and we don't talk about our periods. And you talked about like pregnancy and how your body might not feel like your own afterwards. And that hit me so hard, because I'm like, I've never heard someone else just say that. And yet how many people have probably felt that and dealt with it, right? So many people felt like they weren't prepared for motherhood. There's nothing that can prepare you. But I think that talking about actual challenges and not shaming mothers into thinking they only have to be mothers or that's all they can be, that's the type of language that I was hearing you, like how you were speaking. And that's kind of what caught my attention around like, this is authentic, and this is going to be, I'm going to learn a lot about what it's like for women who are dealing with this. And it's so important.
And linking it to your industry, I'll go back to the money equation. I've been posting on social media, and in my own learning, we talk about shaking people with love. And I'm asking the question, like, are we okay with the $1 million wealth gap? You know, you saw the report by Merrill Lynch that says that women from a young age, and that was in your case because you were taught something very different. Like, I loved your anecdote with your grandfather, but we're taught to budget and save. Boys are taught to invest and take risks. Out of university, we're offered $5,000 to $6,000 less across every profession. That was a report published in January 2020.
Exactly. You can't argue with it. That's actually what it's just being reported. It's a statistic.
It's a statistic, right? Then we don't negotiate as much. We don't ask for raises. Then we take breaks for caregiving duty. So that's often one of my arguments, like when I try to shake women with love and say, do your mat leave differently, do that return to work differently, like come join us, right? And so I don't know how much people really care about the motherhood. I'll be very controversial. Like I'm wondering if people really care about the $1 million wealth gap. I've also noticed that for women, it's not just about the money, because when you're doing planning as a unit with your husband, divorce aside, right? Like you're building wealth together. But is it okay for women not to make that money, not to ask more, not to discuss it with their daughters? Like, how come we're not talking about this more? How come there's no process when we plan for mat leave and make you think about your pension buyback? Nobody told me that I'd have 6 weeks to decide whether I should buy back a pension. Like that's like a thousands and thousands of dollars. I have a deadline. I have like a few weeks to decide. That's
you guys. We're helping her with this right now. So like, she's not just saying this out of nowhere. Like this is a real thing she's dealing with. And I'm surprised that you're bringing this up and sharing this. Like it just shows how real you are, because that's actually something we're helping you figure out. And it's like, well, you didn't even know that this would be something. And then there's this time frame. And you're absolutely right that like, are women okay with this? Do they care about it? And actually brings me to the topic of like risk, right? So a lot of the times in the investment world, I can always say this for women, our jargon is like, are you a conservative investor or are you an aggressive investor? And what people don't realize is that aggressive actually comes with the words like growth, ownership. You know, what happens is you're really just investing in a company and you're going to make money off of that, but there's volatility because it's a company, right? Sometimes it has profit, sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't mean you're putting all your money into something and you're losing it. And so often risk and like is associated with aggressive. And so there's that like hindrance where women are like, oh, I'm not going to do that because it's risky, but they're not associating it with ownership and growth and how that works. We like the word conservative. We're not taught, right? Like how many children's books did you read for women and entrepreneurship?
None.
I had zero plan to own my own business. It wasn't, you know, you say I was equipped with my grandpa teaching me about money. That still meant that I was going to work for someone. That didn't mean that I was going to start my own thing. I had to convince myself consistently to like start and do this. And I had to question, like when I first started, every single week, I would be like, should I quit? I questioned my decision to open a business. So that's something real that I think we all have to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, women, unless they start talking about money and talking to others, I'll go back to this pension buyback because somebody told me, I researched it hardcore. Months before my first mat leave, I started looking. And are we good for time, Afshar? Like, are we still?
Yeah, I booked you in, yeah.
I started planning for my first mat leave months before. So I'm a planner. I did spreadsheets. Like it was so hard to get any information to figure out what my budget could be for the year because there are so many variables. There's no software to figure it out. There's no advisor who could give me the information.
Yeah.
And so I found out in fine print somewhere buried deep in a PowerPoint presentation that I could buy back my pension plan, transferring it from an existing RESP, right? So in public sector, you have the unicorn defined benefit pension plan. I mean, that's kind of like a pretty precious thing. It means you're going to get money until you die, essentially, right? Yeah. And so I didn't know whether I should or shouldn't. Like nobody could guide me on it. Finally, I did find a for-fee financial advisor. I read Money Sense. I found somebody I trusted, and they said, like, absolutely buy it back. You know, my wife did it. She had 4 leaves with that company. Do it. Like, it's just a no-brainer. And it was thousands of dollars that I had to decide on. And then it came in the mail, and it's like, you have to provide your papers by then, and like build in the 3 weeks of administrative, window. So it gave me like a month to make the decision.
Yeah.
Right. So I made a decision for thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars that will compound probably into tens of thousands of dollars.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. When people
right. I equipped myself. I researched it. So I'm telling I'm telling them today, sorry, then I'll like, what are you doing right now to surround yourself with the right people so that when you have to make those tens of $1,000s decisions, you're going to have the right experts around you to advise you. Sorry, we're both.
It's so good that you're saying. It's so hard. I want to add to what you're saying, but it's like so vital that I let you finish. So, that's the whole idea of like. So when it comes to your pension, people will say, "What do you do in wealth management?" And I'm like, pension analysis. So, what's really important here is like you don't know what you don't know. That's what you're talking about, right? We know what we know. We know what we don't know. right? I don't maybe understand quantum physics, but I know what I understand is the investment world. But you don't know what you don't know. So when I'm an advisor sitting down, one of the first questions we ask is, do you have a pension? And then I look at your age, and then I look at getting a statement. It's the first thing within a first meeting. I'm get your statement. And the reason for that is because there's this gap. I know there's this time frame. Let's say it could be when you're 40 or when you're 55. It depends on if you're going to leave your job or not, that you have to make this decision, and we're going to do that in advance for you, right? So people aren't going to know to come to me to say, hey, can you look into my pension? We're doing that for you. So you do have to surround yourself with experts and professionals and people who know what they're doing, because you're not going to know to ask that, right? Everything you're talking about in a pension is exactly why we have our system set up the way that we do, which is we ask for your pension statement to begin with. And then in addition to what you were saying, people don't know that you can actually get a commuted value for your pension, right? So like, you could get a monthly amount until you pass away. But guess what? When it comes to your estate, when it comes to intergenerational wealth planning, if something happens to you, your entire pension is gone. Your spouse might get a shorter percentage of it, but you don't have anything. And so there's this like 1 month or 3 month time period where you have to decide if you're going to take a pension of $4,000 a month or $1.1 million transferred to your name, so that it's now within your family and you can pass it on to generations. So I'm talking about people approaching retirement. Imagine you're approaching retirement and you think it's safe to take this monthly amount, right, until you pass away. It's the golden thing. Like everybody dreams to have, ongoing income without having to work. But what they don't know is that there is an option to take everything you've contributed and your employer's contributed in a lump sum and invest it within yourself and have it in your name to now carry on through different generations.
Yeah, so this nugget of information for whoever decided to stick with us today, this is what I'm talking about. Those are the nuggets that could make tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars of difference in your life.
Yeah.
And maybe if you didn't show up today, you would never know it.
Yeah.
It's a very self-serving moment. I will. And this is what I talk about, shaking women with love. In the MomBA program, you'll get these nuggets and hundreds more. So think about the compounding effect of getting this type of advice at the right time when, as a mom, you're making decisions every single day for the well-being of your family. And my question to you is, do you want to do it alone, stuck in your head, and go to Dr. Google for advice and try to find all the experts? Or do you want to join a community of women who are in the same space as you, who have the same concerns, who have gone through it, and we're surrounding ourselves with experts, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like investing in that knowledge to have the right people at the right time, so you know how long your mat leave should be, what decisions you should make around your child's health, and where to go for the right information, what kind of discussions you need to have with your partner, how long should your mat leave be, right? Should you, like women say, it's not worth for me to work because childcare is too expensive. We're not talking about the lost pension value and the compounded effect of that choice. Of course, if you decide to stay with your kids because that's what you want to do, that's a different story. You're aligning with your values. But if you stop working because you think it's not worth your salary in the short period of time, you're making a decision without the full picture.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I'm thank you so much for joining us. I think we've been talking for about 40 minutes, but my mind is blown every time we talk, and I just can't wait for our brainstorming session. So I hope that whoever's watching us today will take that next move in financial literacy. First of all, if you don't like talking about money, one tip for me would be like read some magazines, subscribe to some newsletter, and get into the habit of talking about money. Time block in your calendar when we're talking about what does a financial plan involve. Research that. Research what is an RSP. Research alternatives. Afsha has, I haven't found out about the details yet, but RESPs, there are, everybody thinks like my child is born and I should open an RESP. I'll be honest, I have a bit of a different attitude. That's my personal choice. But that's the kind of like the common wisdom. I should open an RESP. We're not going to tackle that today. I know you're going to be coming back as a guest to us, but
there's other options, and it's important to know that, and that's what we're going to go into.
There are options, and talk to your husband about money. Make it a habit, and just like enjoy, plunge into it. Talk about wealth, read books, and push yourself to the next limit. So, Afsha, thank you so much for your time. What are the last words you want to say? I asked that 15 minutes ago, but
let's conclude to what you're saying. And one thing I'm learning personally, this is very personal, and it's like not being afraid to ask for help, not being afraid to reach out to others. So when you're saying research, like talk to other people who've done this program, talk to other people who have financial advisors, ask. Don't be afraid to think like, oh, I can't talk about my money because it's, embarrassing. Like, no, when you go to a professional, like my friends, people who know me say, I'm kind of worried about coming to you about what I have. And I'm like, look, when I see your debt, I don't think anything in terms of judgment for you. It's like a doctor assessing your pain. I'm just here to come up with a remedy. So I would just say, like, start being, more aggressive with being able to ask people for help and reach out to your friends and reach out to professionals and ask for help. You don't have to do everything on your own. And that is certainly something that I had running through my head for the very first part of my business, was like, I got to do this on my own. What's a mentor going to do? Like, I need to do this on my own. But no, I'm going to leave you with, just concluding on what you said, because we could, what's the last thing? What's one more thing? And I would just say, like, outside, be unreasonable, but ask for help. Like, stop being afraid to reach out to people.
Yes, absolutely. Any success books talks about that. You can't do it alone. That's the first thing, the introduction, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. We're getting a lot of comments here. I can't see all the names, but Mariola says, thanks for the bombs of wisdom. Keep going. Jolene says, thank you. I see clapping hands. I see comments, so we can look at those comments after. But I'm not going to see where we can find you, because you're very findable. And we also can see that you're going to be findable in the Mom BU program. And we can't wait to talk money and wealth with you. It's going to be awesome.
So
thank you, everybody.
Okay, take care.
Thank you.